Hello gang YouTubers, on with SpongeBob 101 back here again on the SpongeBob channel with another Cam Coral SpongeBob's Under Years episode review video. In this video we are reviewing episode number 12, The Ho Ho Horror and Outhouse Outrage. The synopsis states, Santa Claus visits the children of Cam Coral who aren't quite sure what to make of the Jolly Giant. Then, the outhouse explodes in front of Mr. Krabs, but he gets 3 different sides of the story from his campers. 2 really cool episodes in my opinion, so let's dive right in. Let's start off with The Ho Ho Horror. Honestly, I thought the title was a little bit weird because this episode doesn't really have any horror involved, but regardless, this is clearly a Christmas or a holiday themed episode. I guess we could see this premiering on Nickelodeon this Christmas, possible 2021. Get into the content here. So Santa Claus is, chilling on his float in his pool, reading a travel magazine when he comes across an ad for Bikini Bottom, voted second happiest town in the sea 2 years in a row. He realizes that he actually has forgotten to visit Bikini Bottom, and the last time he forgot to visit a town was in like 1921 or something. So he proceeds into the ocean with his diving helmet, and we do see a huge size difference. So Santa Claus is super huge and all the campers are really tiny, so he does drop off all the gifts at their various cabins, interrupted a little bit by both Patrick and SpongeBob. So Patrick has this drinking problem. Specifically, he drinks a lot of root beer. I'm not sure why a kid like Patrick would be drinking root beer, but he really has to go to the outhouse because he drank too much root beer. And then meanwhile, SpongeBob is sleep jellyfishing. So Santa Claus has to make sure that no one wakes up and notices him, so he quickly does his work and also puts this log in front of the cabin, which affects Squidward later. And I'm not sure what he was thinking, but he thought he could hide behind the announcer tower or the watchtower, and I mean, I'm surprised that no one actually noticed him when he was hiding behind that. So I'm not sure how that works, but okay, you can clearly see right through. Okay, so Squidward comes out, plays his little song, and this is when Santa realizes how bad Squidward's clarinet playing is and strikes him off the nice list, unfortunately. So all the kids wake up, they get their gifts, and SpongeBob warns them not to open it because his mom always says, do not accept gifts from strangers. I mean, I really like how they mixed in all the parental advice into this episode, because clearly they do not know Santa's, and being kids, they probably should listen to their parents' advice, right? So Patrick really wants to open his box because he wants to check if there's root beer. I thought this is pretty funny, but then he has to go to the loo again. So you know what they decide to do with the gifts? They decide to burn it to the horror of Santa Claus. So, I mean, I guess that's kind of horror tying into the title of the episode, but aside from that, there's more action, but it's not really horrific. So Santa tries to make the kids open to him in the sense, like, don't be afraid of him, and that doesn't work. So SpongeBob and the whole gang go over to the camp counselor's cabin to ask for help, and Mr. Krabs, of course, is not really very helpful. So Santa Claus still fails to convince all the kids that he is a gentle giant, and there's this part where the jocks use like towels to whack his butt or something, and Patrick does that too. I thought this was really epic. Again, this is one of those random outbursts, but instead of thinking of a diabolical plan, Patrick goes right ahead and does his thing. So they tie down Santa Claus, and I'm not sure why Santa Claus acted as if he was being threatened here, but clearly he had the means to just break out of it. So he does succeed for a little bit by giving the kids candy, but then Squidward, a very paranoid Squidward actually, comes by and tells them to spit it out because they should not accept candy from strangers either. Let's go from bad to worse here, and now it is time for Santa Claus to brawl with another gentle giant, or maybe not so gentle, but also giant, and inflated Mrs. Puff. Their brawl causes a whole lot of trouble and destruction in Camp Coral, and this eventually wakes Sandy up. So Sandy notices the red giant monster is Santa Claus, right? And she tries to convince everyone else that Santa Claus is a good person and is a friend. But of course, they are still on the side of Mrs. Puff, so it is up to Sandy to stop the brawl. And I really like this part because Mrs. Puff, being inflated with the bicycle pump, she has like latch on her back so that you can let out the air like a bouncy house. If you want to deflate the bouncy house, you just have to let the air out using that thing. So yeah, opening the plug and Mrs. Puff goes down. And I really found this part really funny where Patrick's like, say no more, give me the candy. Everyone opens their gifts, and yeah, it turns out Santa Claus wasn't harmful after all. And Mrs. Puff like, oh, sorry for the misunderstanding. So yeah, that's basically how the episode ends. Santa Claus gets on his reindeer and flies off into the ocean sky with Plankton stuck to his boot. And I thought this was really cool. Hopefully Plankton makes it back to Bikini Bottom. I guess he will find a way, right? So I like the idea of this episode. I'll just give it an 8 out of 10. Kids should always listen to their parents, which means that, Santa Claus really wasn't a bad guy, but the kids weren't that terrible either, aside from the fact that he wanted to burn the gifts. Yeah, comment box below what you guys thought about this episode, but we must move on. Out of the 2 episodes, I prefer the next one, Outhouse Outrage, a little bit more. Basically, Mr. Krabs tries to go do his business in the morning at the outhouse, but it blows up in his face. And so he is determined to find out the culprit or the cause of the explosion of the outhouse. He identifies 3 suspects. First, we have Squidward. Second, we have SpongeBob. And third, we have Patrick, who's, as usual, pretty... he doesn't really know what's going on, right? So I really like how this part where SpongeBob's zipping his nose. And because Mr. Krabs told him to zip it. But yeah, that was really funny. Okay, so here we have Mr. Krabs basically doing like his judge stick, his jury stick, and his executioner stick as well. So basically, Mr. Krabs is the ultimate arbiter of the 3 characters' fates. So Squidward goes up first. He tells his story in a very warped way as well, because he views SpongeBob and Patrick sleeping in cages, and then he goes out to play the morning song, the wake up song, and he thinks that everyone loves him and is throwing roses at him. And this is when SpongeBob presents his gift, which is like a mask made out of oily rags. I'm not even sure why SpongeBob even wants to do things like that. I mean, okay, he's probably quite innocent, but man, it's pretty complicated to use oily rags. Where are you even gonna find oily rags as a kid? Or puts it in in his treasure chest, and he says that he's gonna bury it. I thought this was so funny. Yeah, you guys gotta watch this episode. I really enjoyed it, and I'm pretty sure you guys will too. So yeah, okay. Let's move on. So there's also this part where Patrick is a clown again. So that clown thing from episode 5 is here as well. And then Squidward basically goes over to the outhouse and dumps the rag mask into the toilet. And so Mr. Krabs accuses Squidward of being the true culprit. But this is when SpongeBob jumps in. No, SpongeBob has his own story. So this one, I really like the part where it was a rainy morning when actually the rain was just caused by Patrick drooling, and SpongeBob is carrying an umbrella in his sleep. Man, that is some skill right there. I mean, that's as slightly as good as Mermaid Man sleeping with his eyes open, right? So there's this part also after Squidward leaves where he uses the oily rags using his teeth as a sewing machine. And this is cool, but also really gross, because remember, the oily rags are like filthy. So yeah, Squidward returns. He gets powdered trash, and he accepts SpongeBob's gift very gleefully. So this really doesn't have anything to do with the cause of the explosion, because the cause of the explosion is this cake. I wish for a solid constitutional. And the reason why SpongeBob is bringing the outhouse the cake is because he says that it is the outhouse's birthday. I did not know that outhouses' birthdays matter, but okay. So when asked how that would cause an explosion, basically the cake has candles. So I guess that kind of explains it. So now it's Patrick's turn to jump in, and he tells a crazy story about how he wakes up in the clouds and from his diary of 2 pieces of bread. And basically he's like a hero attacking the aliens and all that with his stinky breath as well. So Mr. Krabs is completely like, what does that have to do with what we're talking about? So basically Patrick then cuts over to his story where he basically brings Plankton's super horrendous radioactive chili to the outhouse, whom he calls his good friend Audi. He just dumps the whole pot of green gloop into the outhouse. I'm pretty sure Audi didn't enjoy that, but yeah, so basically Mr. Krabs now thinks that it is Patrick who caused the explosion. So, however, he is really confused because all the stories are a little bit ridiculous. And this is when Predatory appears, Predatory from episode 3. So she appears in the day and she helps 4 of them summon the ghost of the spirit of the outhouse. And it turns out that the real cause, the catalyst for the explosion, is the fact that Mr. Krabs had been dumping Pearl's dirty diapers into the outhouse because there was no diaper service in the forest, right? And so the outhouse is of course really angry. The spirit dumps all the a whole pile of trash and disgusting junk onto them, and then just leaves. I didn't really understand this part, but then again, remember, the outhouse already exploded, so it's not like the ghost could possess the outhouse again and like spurt out everything. So I guess the trash had to come from somewhere, right? Okay, so it is up to the 4 of them now to rebuild the outhouse, and things go pretty okay. There's this part where Patrick gets a bucket on his head and he's slamming Squidward with that plank of wood, which I thought was so terrible of him, but in typical Patrick fashion. So eventually the outhouse is completed and Mr. Krabs gets first dibs on using the outhouse. However, Patrick notices that there is a nail sticking out, and of course when there's a nail sticking out, Patrick has to hit it. So he hits it, causing Mr. Krabs a whole lot of pain, and then the outhouse explodes once again. So of course Patrick cries out in horror as Audi is once again destroyed. And that's how the episode ends. So that was Outhouse Outrage, basically. And in terms of rating, I will have to give Outhouse Outrage a 9 out of 10. I really enjoyed this episode. It was really funny, especially the first time I watched it. One of the litmus tests, right, is basically the first time I watch it, is it funny? And I thought this episode had so many different jokes. I didn't really like the goop that was dumped out at the end, but, it was really gross. But then again, I really liked the interrogation sessions, the whole return of Predatory and the working together, characters working together, all that. So really nice. Comment box below what you guys thought. Which out of the 3 story would you think is most reliable? It's kind of hard to believe either Squidward or SpongeBob, but Patrick's story, I think, the chili, that's probably the catalyst if Mr. Krabs didn't show up in the first place. So yeah, that is all for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe, like, favorite, comment, etc. Keep it right here on SpongeBob 101. We have one more episode to go, episode 13, and then we're done for this new batch of episodes. So next review coming up real soon. See you guys in that video. Bye!